Hello again and happy Thursday, late evening local time from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. This is a less inflammatory topic about the US presidents. The list of US presidents who only knew one language, who knew two languages, or the multiple languages, at least at some level. The general and sad trend has been towards monolingualism, despite the fact that overall the US educational system has improved by leaps and bounds since the late 18th century when the country was established through the American Declaration of Independence, through the War of Independence, the Treaty of Paris, and then the Articles of Confederation, although they were drawn up already during the War of Independence, and eventually the US Constitution. So between 1775 and 1787. However, well, it seems that the influence of English has become so pervasive that aside from Spanish, which has been the most commonly used proven language known by a few, well, two post World War II US presidents, they have preferred to have formally learned only English. Ironically, the most multilingual US presidents. So let's take a look. John Adams, apparently George Washington, the first US president, only knew English. But his immediate successor, John Adams, the second US president, knew, in addition to his native English, Latin and French. And he actually became fluent out of those two languages, at least in French, while he was posted in France during the Revolutionary War. Ironically, his successor and longtime political rival, although they reconciled as old men and former presidents of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, was truly a multilingual man and president. In addition to his native English, he spoke and read French, Latin, and Italian at least. He also claimed to be able to read as of 1817, when he was already retired, these languages along with Greek and Spanish. He also studied and wrote about the Old English or Anglo-Saxon language and even studied some German. After his death, a number of books, dictionaries, and grammar manuals in various languages were found in Jefferson's library, suggesting that he studied additional languages, possibly including even Arabic, Irish, or Irish Gaelic, and Welsh. But we don't know if he actually was able to understand and or communicate in those languages to any significant extent. He told John Quincy Adams, ironically his predecessor's and rival's son, and one of his successors as US president, although not his immediate successor, that he had learned the language over the course of 19 days while sailing from the United States to France. So some of those long cruises across the North Atlantic before the invention of quick steamships in the late 19th and early 20th centuries had some benefits. So during that 19-day sailing journey across the North Atlantic from the United States to France, he had borrowed a Spanish grammar and a copy of the world-famous novel Don Quixote from a friend and read them during the trip. Adams, however, expressed skepticism, noting Jefferson's tendency to tell large stories or tall tales. Well, if we're speaking of the current and very likely soon-to-be former US President Donald Trump, then I don't think that Jefferson was such a big exaggerator as he. James Madison started to study Latin at the age of 12, and by the time he entered the College of New Jersey, later Princeton University, he was able to speak, in addition to his native English, Greek, Latin, and French. While in college, Madison learned to speak and read Hebrew, and he remained at college for an additional year to study ethics and Hebrew in greater depth. He was even able to produce many translations of the Latin orations of Grotius, Pufendorf, and Vattel. James Monroe was able to speak the French language fluently enough in order to speak it often with his family members. He learned the French language fluently while posted as a diplomat in Paris. John Quincy Adams, in addition to his native English, was able to speak fluent French and conversational Dutch. And at times he even translated a page of Dutch a day in order to help improve his mastery of the language. He was even able to become at least conversational in German when his father appointed him the US ambassador to Prussia, which at the time was the largest German kingdom in what are now northern Germany and northern Poland, and even the Kaliningrad enclave of Russia. He improved his skills by translating articles from German to English, and this is something that I encourage you, dear students of foreign languages, to do, even if those languages were not so easy to learn. And his studies made his diplomatic efforts more successful. So, in addition to French, Dutch, and German, John Quincy Adams, and of course his native English, was also able to understand at least some Italian and Russian. He also was able to read Latin very well and studied classical Greek in his spare time. Martin Van Buren, or should I say Van Buren, so far has been the only US president whose native language was not English. In his case, it was Dutch, which is a West Germanic language that, according to some linguists and lay experts or speakers of languages, is somewhere between German and English among the Germanic languages. Naturally, he learned English. He was also able to understand a bit of Latin while studying at Kinderhook Academy. William Henry Harrison, in addition to his native English, was able to become, well, at least as far as being able to understand written texts in the language, reasonably proficient in Latin at Hampden Sydney College, and he also learned a bit of French there. John Tyler, in addition to his native English, spoke, or at least was able to understand, Latin and Greek. James Polk, at the University of North Carolina, learned, in addition to his native English, Greek and Latin. He received at that university honors in both Greek and Latin on receiving or getting his degree. James Buchanan, in addition to his native English, learned Latin and Greek at the private Old Stone Academy before transferring to Dickinson College, and according to this Wikipedia article, he excelled in both subjects. Rutherford B. Hayes, in addition to his native English, studied Latin and Greek at the Isaac Webb School in Middletown, Connecticut. Soon he became proficient in them, and he also learned a bit of French at that school. James Garfield, in addition to his native English, knew and even taught both Latin and Greek. And he also was able to speak, at least at some level, German. He was even the first US president to campaign in two languages, in English and German. Um, it is even claimed that he was able to um, write the answer in Latin to his friends' questions with one hand while simultaneously writing the answer in Greek with the other, because he was also ambidextrous. He was able to write in both um, hands, or with both hands. Chester Arthur, in addition to his native English, was able to speak conversational Latin and Greek. Theodore Roosevelt, the first US president whose term was fully in the 20th century, in addition to his native English, was able to speak German and French, although he struggled in conversational German. The curious fact was, if this Wikipedia article is accurate, I'm not sure about that, spoke French unusually without tense or gender. John Hay, Secretary of State, or the US Foreign Minister under Roosevelt, commented that while Roosevelt spoke odd, grammatically incorrect French, he was always easy to understand. By contrast, although he could fluently read and understand German, when he tried to speak it, he struggled to do that. He was also able to read Italian, and at one point he studied some Greek and Latin. He also understood some Dutch language, no wonder, since he was, for example, Dutch origin, as was his distant cousin and one of his successors, Franklin Roosevelt. So Theodore Roosevelt also taught songs in Dutch to his children and grandchildren, as was documented in a letter in English that he wrote to the painter Nelly Bodenheim in Amsterdam, the better known Dutch capital. The Hague is where the Dutch government and parliament are located. Woodrow Wilson, in addition to his native English, was able to speak, or at least understand, some German. He did read German sources when they were available, but he often complained that it was slow for him to understand them sufficiently. Herbert Hoover, with his wife Lou, was able to speak, in addition to their native language, Latin, even Mandarin, or some Mandarin Chinese, because they lived in China from April 1899 to August 1900. Hoover confessed, or President Hoover confessed, that he only was able to learn 100 words in Chinese. Still, they could converse in their limited Mandarin Chinese when they wanted to keep their conversations private from the guests or the press. Franklin Roosevelt, in addition to his native English, spoke German and French, and he was actually raised speaking both, because his early education consisted of governesses or his private tutors from Europe preparing him for boarding school in his teens. In particular, he had a German governess and a French governess who taught him their respective languages. He spent one summer of his schooling in Germany, and both his time with his instructors and his frequent trips abroad allowed him to master both German and French, although he always spoke them with a distinct New England accent. His governesses also taught him some Latin. When he visited Quebec City, which is the capital of the province of Quebec in eastern Canada, in 1936, he was able to give a speech both in English and in French. The oldest surviving US president, the now 96-year-old Jimmy Carter, in addition to his native English, is able to speak German, but never has been fluent in the language. He has been, I'm sorry, uh, Jimmy Carter has been able to speak some Spanish, but never fluently, as he himself has admitted. He studied Spanish at the United States Naval Academy and continued his studies while an officer of the United States Navy. Sometimes he spoke Spanish during his 1976 presidential election campaign advertisements on television, but in his native South Georgia accent. While he could speak Spanish fairly fluently, he joked about his sometimes flawed understanding of the language while discoursing with native speakers. He both wrote and gave a number of speeches in the Spanish language and sometimes spoke to constituents or voters in Spanish. To practice his Spanish, he and his wife Rosalind read the Bible in Spanish to each other every night. Bill Clinton, in addition to his native English, is able to speak German because when he was a freshman at Georgetown University, he had to choose a foreign language to study, and he chose German because he was impressed by the language's clarity and precision. And he's able to casually converse in German. Later, while giving a speech during his first presidential term at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, the German capital, he gave a part of his speech in German, pledging to the 50,000 Germans gathered there that Amerika steht an ihrer Seite jetzt und für immer, or America stands on your side now and forever. Out of the 21st century presidents, George W. Bush has demonstrated at least limited proficiency in one foreign language, Spanish. So he speaks some Spanish in addition to his native English and has even delivered speeches in Spanish. However, he has used English words and expressions throughout his Spanish speeches, which of course is not a manifestation of any thorough fluency in the language. During his first presidential campaign in 2000, some news outlets reported that he was fluent in Spanish, although a campaign spokeswoman and others described him as having conversational proficiency rather than being completely fluent. Barack Obama, who was the US president from 2009 to 2017, lived between 1967 and 1971, so from the age of 6 to the age of 10 in Jakarta, Indonesia, and attended local Indonesian language schools, and reportedly he was able to learn some Bahasa Indonesian. During a White House interview with an Indonesian journalist, he remarked that he used to be fluent in the language, but he had not been able to use it much as an adult. However, during his 2008 presidential campaign, he indicated that he considered himself monolingual. In discussing foreign language education, he said, "I don't speak a foreign language, it's embarrassing." Apparently, the current and with an almost 100% likelihood soon to be former US President Donald Trump doesn't speak any foreign languages, which is a bit surprising given the fact that two of his three wives, including his first wife, Ivana, and his current wife, Melania, are both immigrants. Ivana is a Czech American, while Melania is a Slovene American. His middle wife, Marla Maples, is a native-born American. And it also seems that while he greatly values education, the incoming US President, Joe Biden, does not at least speak any foreign languages, which is a pity, because if the US presidents wanted to have more international global images, they would take great care to be able to speak conversationally, at the very least in political matters, at least one foreign language, be it Spanish, be it French, German, Italian, Arabic, Russian, or some other one. there's some challenge for President elect Joe Biden.